Welcome to the Wednesday podcast for the SC Hub. I am Munster Mash, your regular host, but joining me are two fairly well-recognised names now in the Supercoach community. Anton, who is, I think, a resident Warriors fan for everybody through Supercoach, and the one and only Rob Sutherland. Welcome, guys. Thank you for joining us.
It's a pleasure. Happy to be here with Waz royalty.
Yeah, it's nice to be on. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, he's right up there with the Joker, I think.
The Joker, yeah. Lovely fella, by the way. Lovely fella. Yeah.
All right. No worries. Anyway, look, we are here to talk Supercoach. So the first thing I'll check is, how are you guys going for the year? How did you go this round? Rob, we'll start with you. How did you go?
I think I did okay. I couldn't tell you the exact score. It was enough that I was in the 3000s and I stayed around a bit under the 3000s. Every year I start with the goal of not embarrassing myself, and I see that as sub 5,000, and the goal is sub 1,000. And I played too conservatively to do ever any better than that.
What about you, Anton? How are you going this year?
I've been actually going all right this year. I had a bit of a aggressive trade strategy pretty much the whole way, and then kind of slowed down around the big bye week. So I haven't really used my boost. I've just kind of gone, you get 3 trades on bye week. So I just did that. And I've been hovering around the top 1,000 for a while. And before this round, I was 1,157. And I had James Tedesco, but I was like, everyone else is doing that. And I got greedy. And I was like, I'm going to do a pod captain. And it didn't work. So I captained Sam Walker, and I ended up getting 999, which is cruel because it's so close to actually 1,000, but it's just not enough to get that little number. So I'm kind of now down around the 2,000 mark, but still within striking distance, hoping to get within the top 1,000 by the end of the season.
Yeah, my top 1,000 dream is more or less done now. I think I'm probably a little bit too far back at this stage. I've had a few shocking rounds, but I'm on the way up a bit. I pulled a 1075 this round with my captaincy on Dom Young. I will put a quick shout out to the Discord because they talked me out of some pretty shocking options. Otherwise, I almost went with Chance once I saw what the Broncos were. So thankfully that didn't happen, and I went with Dom Young. But I'm hovering at just under 20K. So I can only go upwards from here, and I'll push to the end. More importantly, though, for me, I have been running the consensus team for the Discord, and that's now into the top 2K. So I'm going to go with that one, and that's flying. So if anybody else is out there is not having the best of year, jump on board with the consensus team. All are welcome aboard. Anyway, before we dive into too much more Supercoach talk, we'll cover a little bit about the NRL news and a few things from the Discord itself. So first of all, in the SC Hub overall group, we had a top score of 1357 for the team Tipsy by Bishal. So very well done for this week. And then for the NRL news, it honestly looks like the contract season has started. Players are becoming available all over the shop. We saw it today with Chad Townsend getting signed for the Roosters. Rob, you are the resident Roosters fan here. What do you think about Chad?
I can tell you, when the news broke, I was at work, and I was not filled with joy. I don't see Chad as the future. I don't hate signing him for 300K to play New South Wales Cup and sort of have a leadership role at training. But I think he was a very good player a few years ago at the Sharks, and that's quite a few years ago now. I don't want to play him in the first 13 at the Roosters, but I can live with it as a 1-year signing.
Yeah. The Roosters have a habit of doing this, though. They do, like last year, like this year it's Michael Jennings, and he's ended up playing first grade. The year before it was Kevin Nagama. People were like, really? But like, I think they really value just having a really experienced person in the club with that kind of second tier of players. And if they get called on, they know they can do a job. But like, their real role is to kind of imbue that kind of sense of leadership through the broader squad, which is kind of cool. But like that, whenever you hear the signings, they're not like nobodies. They're people who were somebodies. But now you kind of go, that's a bit weird, because you think it's going to be a top 17 signing.
Yeah.
But I'm with Rob here. I don't think he probably is.
I think it's you also get with the Roosters, it's a little bit sometimes a stalking horse signing. You'll pick up this veteran. People think, okay, they've made their move, but there's another move. And I think with the Roosters, there's another move. I don't think it's Dylan Brown. I know that's the rumor going around. I don't have any inside knowledge in this from the newsroom. I'm just saying I don't think it's Dylan Brown, but I think there's a big play coming in the halves. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's not Sean Johnson. He's already shot that one down.
It's not SJ. It's not SJ. You keep him on his retirement tour.
Yeah.
Yeah, just on this old Chad Townsend thing, one thing I've noticed I'm a keen follower of the EPL, and I've seen with a lot of the top teams over there over the last few years, they've been signing these players that are on the verge of retirement to almost be like a captain coach kind of player for the reserves. So I wonder if this is a sign of that starting to come through to the NRL. It'd be very interesting to see if other teams, I guess, take the same sort of lead and sign these kind of players in the next couple of seasons as well. Anyway, we've obviously seen as well, there's a bunch of Knights players have gone on the market, some pretty big names, funnily enough. So I wonder, I'd be interested to see what Daniel Saifiti ends up signing for another team. Same with Jaden.
800,000, I would think.
Sure.
I mean,
you would think so.
He owes his manager a couple of drinks. 800,000 for. I mean, Saifiti had a couple of good years, but geez, that's right at the top.
Yeah.
I was thinking about this. It'd be if you were the Knights and you wanted to get rid of Daniel Saifiti, you could actually unload his brother and not tell them, and then you could see how long you could get away with it for, and then it's only when they do a P test or something they'll be like, wait a minute, that's the wrong Saifiti. But yeah, I think there's probably a few clubs that could do with a decent prop. He's obviously not at his at the peak when he made Origin and all that sort of thing, but he's still a very capable player, and sometimes a change is a good thing. I remember going up to Newcastle and interviewing them when they first arrived at the club, and they were these huge, 19-year-olds in these plastic chairs and scared of talking to anyone or saying anything, really timid and stuff. And then they went on to, kind of obviously develop, but you sort of see with players when they've been at just the one club for a while, they get a bit kind of stagnant and comfortable. Mitch Barnett, when he came to the Warriors, he's kind of had a bit of a resurgence, and you've seen other players that have gone, they've started at kind of one club and gone somewhere else. Suddenly they've got a bit of an injection. I think sometimes it's actually good for the player. So I hope wherever it goes, he gets that second burst, and we kind of see him at the level he was playing at when he was in that Origin setup.
Yeah, that'd be certainly nice to see, though I am a proud Queenslander, so maybe not Origin level form. That'd be nice. Anyway, look, we're here to talk Supercoach, though, so we'll dive into that. The first thing I want to cover, because I think we're going to be talking a fair bit about this whole CTW situation that's kind of fallen upon us over this week and sort of the last week as well, to a degree. So I want to cover the hookers first and get them out of the way. Look, Jeremy Marshall-King was fairly highly owned across the board, I think, for quite a lot of players. But there's a fair few hookers this year that are all about the same. So my question to you is, who do you think is the top one to run home with?
Do you want to go, Anton?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in. It depends. If you're a Marshall-King owner, and let's say you have a secondary player that you don't necessarily want to play week to week, you need to go with someone who you can rely on. I would be probably going for Cook. I just think he's got no more buys left. So that means he's also one of those guys who's physically, he doesn't miss games. You look over his career over the last few years, he's missed hardly any games apart from the times he was rested for Origin. So I think he's a really reliable backup, and I think with you look at his lift in scores since the coach was sacked and Latrell Mitchell's come back. There's a new energy about the team. Not necessarily saying they're going to go on and make the 8 and all that sort of thing, but they're certainly much more competitive, and he's playing with more confidence than we saw in the early part of the season. So I think he's a really reliable selection, and he doesn't seem to have those really low scores like maybe you might get from like a Koroisau or Reed Mahoney if he gets sent off, which he seems to be asking the ref for every single week. Yeah.
So let's just say I'm asking for a friend, somebody that you may have, Marshall King with Jaden Brayley as backup.
Yep.
This friend is me. I'm looking at going within the next couple of weeks, JMK to Cook this week, and then I will probably look to downgrade Brayley to Mamazelis and try to use the handcuff to get me home. So if there's an injury to Cook, Mamazelis is obviously the player to step in. I don't think people will be looking to run a second hooker in their final, so I guess 17, ideally. So, and I just don't think we're going to be looking at a lot of VC loops for the run home, to be honest. So even though he might be like a sort of bench poison, I don't think it's necessarily the worst option. What do you think, Rob? Who are you thinking hookers-wise for the run home?
I think if you had to get a hooker this week to replace JMK, then I agree it's Cook. Right? I think Marnie has had a good run, but I agree Cook's got the better floor. I think best case scenario, and this ties in with the Manu conversation that I'd assume we're going to have later. The better move for me is to wait 2 weeks, right? Wait till Origin's over, because that opens up someone like Connor Watson. I think Connor Watson has the upside of any hooker, perhaps other than Harry Grant on form. But in 2 weeks' time, once the Origin's over and the Roosters are back, and we'll get a stronger sense of where Watson's being deployed. His only issue is he's such a good utility that he might get stuck at a little bit here and a little bit there, and he might get a little bit of time on the bench, and that kind of sucks. But 80-minute Connor Watson at half hooker or lock, I really like it hooker.
Yeah.
And Harry Grant is averaging 64, which is 10 points lower than he's ever averaged. And I think if any player who people are sorry, I'm so used to not swearing but wanting to swear. But on this one I can. But if any player that people are shitting on, as you know, his form's gone, who's going to come back and have really strong last 7 weeks, I think it's Harry Grant. So
well, we have seen with Harry. We have seen with Harry. He's obviously getting the rest now. So I would imagine that Bellamy's probably looking at that in the sense of we rest him now, we don't have to rest him after round 19.
Yep. Final 7 weeks, Munster's back, Paps is healthy, Harry Grant's there. You can just see it all happening for the Storm. But as I say, that's me maybe as a Harry Grant owner trying to manifest it. Yeah.
I think the Harry Grant thing's interesting too, because often Melbourne after Origin, you see them actually really put scores on some of the teams that have maybe they know they're out of the race for the 8. They've had some really bad injuries through the season, and they're actually no longer competitive. The heads are down. Melbourne are one of those teams that put them to the sword. They'll put 50 points on them, and they'll probably do it about 3 or 4 times in the back end of the season. The Roosters can do that as well. And I like the Watson play. And if you don't say if you've got a Jaden Brayley or someone this week, I think he's a play this week because you don't have Phoenix Crossland on the bench. You've got Fletcher Sharp, and I don't actually know where he plays. Maybe he does come on and play a bit of dummy half. But with Brayley, he'll probably just make 50 tackles in the middle, and that's enough for this week. What you can do is if you do want to capitalize on the Watson price right now before it jumps, he's also available in the second row. So you can swap a Kai Pearce-Paul or say someone who, maybe not Kai Pearce-Paul because he plays 19, but say someone who's, if you're still carrying a Jacob Preston or someone that you're not too keen on in that second row, you can swap him in there with the
Ruben Cotter to throw a name in, a guy who's consistent and helps you through the first 15 rounds, but really isn't the upside guy to the finish. Sorry to jump in on it.
That's right. Like you can really just kind of like whack him in their second row, and then next week when you're ready, you can make that play after round 19, move him up to your hooker spot, and then you can bring in a second rower who's finished playing Origin. Or even a Payne Haas if you've got Jules.
Yeah, well, in our comments, we've got Harold here. He's looking at Watson for in round 20. And it's something I potentially could look at myself because as I said, we'll get on to Manu. I'd have the Jules that could make that work potentially if we're trading Manu out, Manu to Watson. So by Ewan Aitken, which is not too bad, but anyway, we'll dive into that in a second. The other thing I really just wanted to talk about with the hookers is there'll be a bunch of people out there that have probably got, like, say, an Appy or or Marnie or somebody in that ilk, and then even if you consider players maybe one step above them, do you think it's worth the trade to swap it, or do you think it's? I mean, hookers, I don't think it's that position it used to be over the last 3-4 years ago compared to now. Would you guys be looking to even like put a trade in at hooker, or if just run home with like an Appy? Like, what do you think, Rob?
Well, I've got Arpey and Grant, right? I raced to get to that situation going, well, that's it. I'm locked. I'm done, right?
Yeah.
So but in your case, you're saying, what if I only had Arpey and say, I don't know, a scrub, enough behind him? I think you've got to trade there. Arpey's too inconsistent to be your single hooker, in my opinion. I think if you're not gonna run two hookers like in the past when we were putting our best 17s out. Quite often you did have two hookers. Now you probably only have one. But I just don't feel that Arpey can be that guy. So I probably would burn a trade to get to that spot. But there's a reason I try to get to two hookers as quickly as possible every time I play Supercoach, and that's because then I don't have to use trades there. Yeah. One goes down, one plays Origin, one's out of form. I bring the other one in. I can play him knowing that in a couple of weeks I'll take him out and bring the other guy in. There's a real value in that.
Yeah, very much so. Anton, what do you think? Would you spend a trade at hooker if, I guess, like to upgrade, or even just what do you think in there?
I was just having a quick look at my team because my hookers, I also am a Brayley owner, a Jaden Brayley owner on the bench, and he's come in handy in the bye rounds. But my starting hooker is also Upper Koroisau, and I've kind of been quite happy with him. He's kind of scored well in the rounds where I've needed him to, and he's averaged about 64 for the season, which is pretty much the same as Grant. So it's just a position I haven't really touched all year. I've kind of just had them there, and there's no one in the position saying like, I'm a chance of 100 week to week. So I'm not scared of not owning anybody at hooker. And certainly as a season gets later and later, I'm less inclined to spend one of my few remaining trades on a position when someone's not injured. So say if you have JMK, then you've got like a Danny Levi as your backup, or someone like Lussick. You kind of can't play those guys. You have to have someone starting who's a reliable scorer. But if you do have someone you can plug in for a week, I think you just do that. But yeah, I think it's a luxury trade. It's kind of the definition of a luxury trade at this point of the season when trades are getting low.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. It's like I'm trading there out of necessity to get out JMK. But yeah, we'll see. I've got a few different options, and we'll go from that. Anyway, CTW. I think this is what everyone's probably mainly wanting to hear about this week. Obviously, the big news is Joey Manu's out, probably until after the Roosters bye later in the year. And so I guess first of all, we'll decide, what are you guys thinking about with Joey Manu? Now, I've seen, Rob, if people haven't seen your stuff through the Daily Telegraph, you've been a bit of a proponent of holding Manu if possible. So I guess expand for people that haven't read that.
Yeah, well, look, I figure at this point of the season, you've probably got 5 or 6 decent centre wings. You should be able to carry one guy on your bench for 2 weeks. In 2 weeks' time, Origin's over. The big round 19 bye is done. We're going to have a very strong sense of where the teams lie. Someone like Zach Lomax becomes available. Someone like Brian To'o, who I think is probably the centre wing that people don't own, that people should own over the last 6-7 weeks. Because once Nathan Cleary comes back in 2021, that's going to unlock To'o, and the other one is Tungo, who is just a bargain. When Cleary comes back. So I think there's lots of good buys in 20. And there's not lots of good buys now. So if I don't need to make that buy, I'm going to wait. That's my rationale.
Yeah, no, I quite like that logic. It's like for anybody that has that depth, and I mean, we've seen it with this year that CTW kind of is that position where you probably want maybe 6 guns, to be honest, for the run home. you should be able to hold him. You should have 5. And then the other thing that I've been pondering personally is if he's having his rest now, if the Roosters rest anyone, he's one of the guys that they'll surely keep on the field. So if they rest Tedesco at the end of the year, we might be getting Manu at fullback for the last couple of weeks. Or
and
last
the Roosters'
round,
last 4 or 5 weeks are pretty juicy too, off the
Yeah.
top of my head. So there's reasons to hold, but I do feel that Manu's more likely to be 6 than 4. So I'm okay with the sell.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you'd hold him forever. I'm tempted to hold him, but I'm okay. I'm saying the sell is 2 weeks from now.
Yes. Anton, what are you thinking with Manu? I'm assuming you've got him.
Not anymore. I am actually on the other side of the spectrum there, where I think, and we saw this in the buy rounds where it's like, have I got enough to cover round 13, round 16? Have I got 13 players? There's having 13 players, and there's having 13 players that are going to do damage and move you in those rounds. And then I think with a guy like Manu, he's one of your guys in your CC dub that can win you matchups week to week. He can score you 100. He can score you one of those freak scores and really kind of elevate your score. And if you don't have him, it's kind of like, I'm kind of in the middle of the pack as opposed to at the top because I just didn't have that one big guy. There's probably a handful of about five guys who are in that bracket thinking, guys, Ruben Garrick. There's not that many of them, and so if he goes down, I kind of go.
We lost you for 2 seconds there. You were just going to list the 5 guys, and then you dropped.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so like as Jacob Carreras, Ruben Garrick, those type of guys, Zach Lomax. There's a few guys that if you don't have them in your team, and others do, and you can't have them all, right? But maybe some people do. Val Holmes. Then those are the guys you're really worried about. So I think while you can cover him and you can throw in like a Mulatalo or a Watini Zalesniak or something like that, or like, someone like that, those guys, even when they score tries, they're not going 100 plus. They're low work rate wingers. They're priced mid 400s for the season for a reason. And that's why we've all got access to them, is because their scores haven't been very good. And so a lot of your backup are guys like that. So I was straight away, I don't have Dom Young, right? So he was straight in for me. I had the money and I was like, I'm scared of that dude. I didn't have him last week, which I was just watching him just go over the try line again. I was like, you bastard. And I captained the wrong guy too. So it was like, ooh, with double whammy. So he's straight in for me because I just don't have him and I'm scared to not own him. So if I was a person who maybe only had 1 or 2 of those guys, and for me, I'm honest, I've actually got enough in my 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th CT dub. I did that out of I thought he might be a buy round player, but wasn't, and he's just vanished off the face of the earth. So I'm stuck with this guy now who's there. But the other 5 are all playable options, but a couple of them need tries. They need tries to, crack 50. So while I'm happy to have them, I kind of, if one of those gun guys go down, I'm bringing another gun straight in. I have to. And the hard thing for people is that he's now 650. So if you don't have cash in the bank, it's like it's a double trade for some people, which sucks. But I just think you kind of need that. Like CT dub is very different from hooker, where if you lose someone else, if you lose your number 1 hooker and you got a guy who's a little bit worse on the bench, you can kind of play him and you might lose 20 points. With these guys, you can lose 100 points. You can swap in like a Watini Zalesniak and he scores you 30 versus a Dom Young who scores 130. Like it's literally that dramatic. So I think the more of those guys you can stack in there and have in there, the better. Having said that, though, if you have taken the strategy, which is like stack CT dub, and you can cover Joey Manu, he's probably a guy I'm going to look to bring back later in the season, at hopefully a reduced rate, and like swap someone like Mulatalo or Watini Zalesniak or whoever's sort of doing the worst. And move him up to Joey Manu for the last kind of 5 or 6 games. But again, that's trade dependent. If you can't do that, you can't do it. But yeah, I would just really sort of caution people who are looking to like wing it with a maybe for like 3 or 4 weeks, because often these injuries, they say 3 or 4 weeks, but sometimes you hold them for 4 weeks and it turns into 6 weeks. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's happened to me before, where you're like, why are you not back yet? And you've held all this time, and it's getting closer to finals, and you're losing head-to-heads in your leagues, or you're dropping down the rankings, and you're kind of like, I should have shifted that guy a month ago, because that's essentially what it is. It's a month. So yeah, I'm in the other camp.
The other thing I've found, I think, is that seems to be, I think, part of the reason why also a lot of people are looking to trade. Like, he's one of the top traded out guys, if not number one. Is that I think everybody's short of cash at the moment.
Yeah.
And we've got Hines, who a lot of people are grabbing this week. Nathan Cleary's a couple of weeks away. People will be looking to jump back on Angus. We've got Ponga this week. All these guys that are at sort of a bit higher coin-wise. And I think that's why we've seen players like a Mazu, a Kula, these, Mulatalo as well, sort of on that price bracket where you might be able to make 150, 200K. They're sort of, I guess, a bit of the flavor of the week as such. So I think that might be part of the reason why people are also looking to trade, is to just bank that little bit of cash to make sure it's easier to jump up from, say...
It makes sense. It makes sense.
Yeah.
Even if you look at Manu's last 4 scores, 51, 39, 63, 48, you could achieve that with Greg Maju. And you could pocket 130K in doing it. So
I disagree. I am of the school that I take Mulatalo and I take him out of that group that you put in with Cooler and Mazu, right? Because I think Mulatalo in the first 8 weeks, right, when they had a decent left and a decent right halves, he was averaging, 75. He's a decent work rate guy. He makes 20 plus runs, 22 runs, and he scores tries. Maybe not so much with Euro inside him, but that can come. But I think, like, I'm either going to go down to enough, right, and give myself $400,000, or I'm going to get to a keeper, like a straight-up keeper, a Garrick, a Young, less so a Sarko, Val Holmes. I think I want those centre wings, and I'm not going to be happy at this point of the season with I know Tolo Kula is trendy and popular, and Mazu, he's not what he was last year. They're not getting him the ball. Ponga coming back might change that. I'll admit that. So Ponga back could make Mazu what Mulatalo was last week, what we're all thinking, because Trindle was back in the team and it was all going to open up the left again. Ponga's back, it's going to open up Mazu again. Maybe that happens, in which case everyone who bought him is going to go great, right? But I prefer either enough or a gun. Yeah.
So there is a player that's been named this week that could potentially be that option. That's Tungo at the Eels. He seems to have that wing spot for 4 weeks. So he could be that guy that you have as, like, you don't play him, but he becomes enough eventually and might just get you through the bye round. He might be, that bye round enough that everybody wants. So it could be worth potentially holding off. I wouldn't do it this week. There's no way I'd do it this week, but maybe next week if he looks all right.
I'd be very cautious of that because Hayes Dunster's back in 2 weeks. So
exactly, a rookie at a bad team. Yeah.
I mean, the thing is, if all you want, and if you've got the trades for it, if all you want is a winger that plays 19 who might flop over and then he disappears, sweet, But like, I think at this stage of the season, like, a trade is really valuable, and it's kind of like, say if he flops over for a try and scores you 60. Like, is that worth it when you've got another 7 rounds to play, and that trade is going to be like, it's a difference if like like a James Tedesco goes down and you got no trades left. Like, that would just be such a kick in the head. Like, you'd just be like, no, and I've stuck with this Eels winger. I just think I think that's just kind of looking for cash. But, you need it, but. Like Rob said, I think if you are looking for cash and you are going to nuff someone, like, that's fine, but you need to just be aware that they are probably just going to vanish, and that's, if you can cover that, that's okay.
Yeah, that would be the only reason I would even consider him, is if he's coming in and staying in as enough. Like, that would be the only way I would even consider it. So for anybody out there considering Tungo at the Eels, don't do it if you intend to trade him out again, or unless you've got like 20 trades, which how? I just want to know how.
Head-to-head players. I respect them. They sit on their trades. I couldn't do it.
No, not at all. So I guess, we've started to talk a bit about these sort of mid-price guys. So I reckon we'll go into a little bit more depth about the two that we haven't really spoken about, is in Marju, in Kula. Obviously, Kula is at fullback this week. Do you guys think that he'll keep the fullback spot with Tommy Turbo, or do you think that might be like a temporary situation? What do you think, Rob?
I think Manly are paying Tommy Turbo $1.1 million a year to play fullback. I know they're terrified of him getting injured again, but workload's not dramatically different at centre than it is at fullback in the modern game. There is a difference, but it's not dramatic. My gut is that it's 1 to 2 games and then you stick Turbo back at fullback where he makes your team better. When have Manly looked like they would make the finals and challenge in the finals? When Turbo's at fullback. Because he just brings that whole team together. Kula's a great athlete and he's going to possibly be a very good fullback, but he's not the fullback that Turbo is. So my gut, based on nothing, is Turbo has to go back to fullback in 2 weeks.
Yeah,
my gut is I've got no idea.
So you go, Anton.
Oh, sorry, mate. Sorry. I just think I don't know. I think like if Seibold really wanted him, saw him as the secondary fullback, then why hasn't he been playing him at fullback this entire time when Tom Turbo was out? He had every opportunity to move him to fullback this entire time. He's played there for Tonga. He's played there at the back end of last year. We know he can do it, but he was just like, no, we want to blood this kid. And then as soon as Turbo comes back, he's like, thanks, kid. See you later. We're just going to move the chairs around and we're going to stick Tom Turbo at centre. So I feel like there's a bit of this kind of Seibold seems to be a bit scattered in kind of his approach here, and it doesn't seem to me making a lot of sense. There's not a lot of logic to it. I think he's just trying to find a way to keep his best players on the field at the same time. I think that's what it is. A lot of people have said like Roger Tuivasa-Sheck at the Warriors needs to play fullback because he was a Dally M fullback, so he has to be fullback. He's playing centre, and they've stuck to their guns for ages. It hasn't worked. He hasn't played well at centre, but the coach is like, well, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to let him acclimatize himself to the position, let him do it, and all that sort of thing. Yeah. This isn't the same situation with Turbo. He's played there at Origin level, and the fact is he's spending so much of the last 5 seasons. He's spent so many games on the sideline. It's $1.1 million, but if you actually look at that salary against the amount of games that he plays, his price per game is astronomical. So they have to find a way to try and do it. I think this is just he's getting advice. He's a real sports science kind of guy, right? He's always been the kind of guy to listen to that side of things. I think this is him just kind of going like, let's just give this a crack and see if we can get more out of Turbo. I think in order for them to know that, for them to kind of have any scientific data on that and to kind of understand whether it's working or not, the proof will be if he gets injured or not. So I think he's probably going to get a run of at least about 3 or 4 games where he will stay at centre unless something happens to Kula. But that doesn't make Kula a buy either, necessarily. Yeah. So I kind of want to see how Kula goes at fullback this week. He's a watch. He's got, I think his break even's like 46. You don't have to get on him this week. Have a look, see how he goes. Marju's a different story, but we can get to him next, I suppose. But that's kind of my take on it. I'm just not sure, basically, because I don't trust Seibold. I don't know what he's going to do. I'm with you, Rob, in that they are their best when he's playing fullback, for sure. They look much better. They're more dangerous, and every time he plays fullback, you're a little bit concerned when you play Manly. So, I kind of understand that as well, but I just don't know what to believe with Manly right now. So I couldn't. Yeah, well, I wouldn't put my house on it.
Yeah, I agree with both of you. I think if you were to grab Kula this week, I think it's with the view of you might have to trade him out, or almost certainly have to trade him out or upgrade. I think that come the end of the year, Manly will probably need to win games if they have any shot at making the 8, and that's with Tommy Turbo at fullback. So I agree, I guess, with both of you, and probably look at 2 to 3 games at centre for Tommy Turbo, and then back to fullback. I don't necessarily like the trade unless you are got the trades to then get Cooler out again, and it's a bit of maybe a cash grab rather than this guy I'm holding till the end. It's
if there was 4 weeks to go, it'd be a different story.
Yeah.
If he got moved here with 4 weeks to go and they had a good run against depleted sides, then that's worth a punt. I'd be like, yep. And we saw at the end of last season, he went absolutely spare with DCE. But knowing that he's out in round 19 too, that changes the dynamic of Manly's attack. So it's not like a bankable thing that because he's playing fullback for Manly, he's going to do well in the bye round.
Yeah.
You know, like their side is going to be different.
Yep, no, agree. Now, let's talk about Mazu. Obviously, we've seen in the past that he's basically a keeper. He was a keeper last year. He was the best centre W. Like, people were bringing him in at the start of the year as the top priced guy because of his form last year. He's that guy that can put up the base stats, or at least he did last year. This year, it's been a bit down. How do you guys view Mazu now? I mean, the reason why everybody's talking about him is that Ponga's back. Like, I think that unlocks it. So before we cover that, one thing I will say quickly, I don't think anybody should be looking at Bradman Best, despite his score last week. With Ponga back in the team, I think there might be a few more cutout balls. So I don't know if he's going to keep up. He's been having a decent little run, Bradman Best, but I don't know if he'll keep up. Anyway, we'll start with you, Rob. What do you think about Mazu and by extension, the Newcastle attack?
Newcastle attack is a complex beast. I can't really work out what they're doing with their halves. I think Adam O'Brien is a really good coach, and that's what confuses me because I think he's a better coach than the way his team plays sometimes.
Yeah.
But that's getting off Supercoach and getting into weird. I can't quite work out your selection stuff. But so back onto Mazu and Best. I think if you're buying Mazu, as I said, if you're buying Mazu this week, you're buying him for upside, you're buying him for Ponga return, you're buying him for tries. You're buying him because he's fun, right? Like, we can get too deep into this. Sometimes super coaches just pick the guy that's fun. Like, I can't stand watching Dallin Watene-Zelezniak. I cannot stand watching because I never own him, right? And he has too much fun and he scores tries, and I hate myself because I don't have him in my team. And I think Greg Mazu can be a little bit like that, right? For teams that he gets the ball and he's going to bust tackles, and if Ponga's there, he's going to score tries. But ultimately, at this point of the season, I don't understand the buy. So to really push into it, I think it's a bad buy. I think you're hoping for upside. You should have depth to wait, and you should be able to buy a real keeper to finish.
Yeah.
We're not at round 6. We're at round 18. That's a long period of time for Mazu to be in form or not in form. Centre wings tend not to suddenly find form in the last 6 weeks, right? They're not Tarpany, right? Who only warms up once the season's almost over and they get going. I just don't see it. I won't rabbit on and run into Anton's time, but I don't see it.
All right, so, Anton, what do you think about Mazu?
Mazu's an interesting one, right? We know at the start of the year he was hampered by injury quite a lot. He didn't have a good off season either, and he's had 3 scores under 40 this season. And if you look at some of the other CT dubs that are making their way into people's sides, like Mulatalo and stuff like that, yes, they started the season well, but they've had low scores in them too. That's just the nature of a winger in a team that's not winning and not getting much ball. The return of Kalyn Ponga changes things with Mazu for me. Like, he scored that really big score last week with no Kalyn Ponga. It was against the Eels for sure, but they've got some really, really juicy matchups coming up. Their last 3 games are Souths, the Gold Coast, and the Dolphins. If Kalyn Ponga is fit for those 3 games and you have him in your CT dub as an option to play, he's a guy that could hurt opposition teams. So I think at 500k, a break even of -12 or something, or whatever it is, something like that, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's negative.
Exactly that. Yeah. So I think if you are going to get him and you are going to take a crack, I would much prefer him over Cooler. And that's just because of Kalen Ponga. You're talking about a guy who averaged 77 last year for the season when they were flying. The Knights had a massive back end to the year. There's still a chance of making the 8. And if they go on a run, Maju is going to be averaging in the 70s and 80s again for the end of the season. And at 500 grand, that's not much of a risk. You won't lose much if it doesn't come off. And if it does come off, you could be sitting on an 800 plus CT dub that everyone's suddenly scrambling to get. So he went really early in draft this year. People were getting him as like the 2nd or 3rd pick, like just really early. And everyone was, and then when it didn't pan out, they were like really disappointed. But I don't mind it as much. Like I can understand if you've already, like, for example, if you're low on trades and you're going, well, maybe I'll trade Mulatalo to him. I think that's sideways, and I think that's a bit silly. Stuff like that. You know what I mean? I've seen a lot of people talking about stuff like that because they just feel like with the break even, they just have to get him because he's going to change. Wingers' prices change. That's what they do. They go up when they score tries. They go up. They don't score tries. They go down. That's kind of what happens. But if you're like me and you kind of think that his scores are intrinsically linked to to Kalen Ponga being there, then I think, and you're looking for someone who's got high upside at a cut price, I think he's actually the best option sub 550k that you can get.
Let's throw it out there though, because we've mentioned his name. But if say last week you'd bought Mulatalo, you bought the dip, you bought the prospect, can you afford to have a Mulatalo and a Mazu in your center wing?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Like, because if you've got, let's go.
I disagree with that.
I'll go through my CT dubs, right? I've got Young, Ruben Garrick, I've got Iro and Dane Gagai as my starters. Mulatalo, Watene Zelezniak, and enough. So, like, in a lot of people's situations, like, they have a couple of really high upside players. In my case, it's Young and Garrick. But then you got real solid guys that average 55, and they don't really go too much higher or too much lower, which is Dane Gagai and also Iro as well. On a really good matchup, you might play Mulatalo or Watene Zelezniak, but not with too much confidence. They need to do a lot to score well. I think Maju can get to the sort of state where he's scoring 55 without a try. And in that case, he becomes similar to Iro, but with upside. So, yeah, I think you can carry those kind of guys. Just because they're similar price doesn't mean they're similar output. And they may not be similar price for long. So I don't know if I'd be going from Manu to Maju unless you had a second move that you needed to pull that was going to enable it. So say if you wanted to get a I don't know, Ali Katoa or a Dylan Brown or whoever it was for round 19. Ali Katoa doesn't play 19. It's a bad example. But you know what I'm saying? If you wanted to make a second move, right? I can kind of understand that because his price is going to go up, and if it doesn't work out, you could probably straight trade back to Manu in 3 weeks to 4 weeks time if it doesn't work out. So I don't know. I don't think there's a wrong answer with Maju. It's completely team dependent, and it all hinges on what your confidence is with the Knights' attack and their run home, and also their draw. So yeah, I'm kind of I can see both sides.
Yeah, for me, the way I'm looking at it with Maju is what games I would want to play him in, because I would say, for argument's sake, if you had your top options at CTW, I think he would be probably your 5th, probably 6th choice. So that's the way I'm looking at it with him, is that if he's my 6th choice CTW, what games am I wanting to play him for? And what game, and at that point, would it be that you want to play a second rower over him or something else, depending on the matchups? Is there better things? And that's the difficult choice, as I said. A lot of it comes down to how strong you think the Knights would go now that Ponga's back. Because I think there's at least 5 CTWs that I think most people will probably want for the run home. So your Carrazes, your Lomaxes, Val Holmes, that kind of stuff that I think will be in most sides. And then whether or not then it's, I guess you probably want one, maybe two guys that you're looking to have as like a bit of a pinch hit, like a Mulatalo, because you're playing him on matchups. And I think Marju falls into that bracket. So it's, yeah, I think it is. Look, it is team dependent. We can rattle on about all of this, and it could make sense for some people, and then make no sense for others. And it's a tough. It really is a tough one. So yes, we'll just all sit on the fence to a degree. So yeah. Anyways, so I've just, I guess, hinted at it a little bit. I'll get it from both of you. We won't go to the full top 5, but I guess who are the 3 for you guys, your CTWs, that everybody should have for the run home? We'll keep it easy. We'll start with you, Rob.
Dom Young, Val Holmes, and Ruben Garrick. So Dom Young, right-hand side, Red Hot Roosters attack. Just love it.
Yeah.
Val Holmes, Cowboys have everything to play for. He's a goal kicker. Doesn't have a huge ceiling. He's not a 140-point guy, but I genuinely don't think he's going to disappoint me. And Ruben Garrick, goal kicker, turbo back, Manly have stuff to play for. He can score 140 playing centre or wing. Those are my 3.
Yep. What about you, Anton?
So I agree with Rob. The only, if I was going to change the third one, I might go from Holmes to To'o. I think he's a guy that I think on the run home is just going to destroy teams. And then the other 2 guys, I think, that there's kind of like a top tier of players. There's Zach Lomax and Kiraz. I think those are the other 2 that can really hurt you week to week. But yeah, I think we're all kind of in agreement there. Like, the problem is you'd love to have like 5 of them, but then you'd never know which one to play week to week. It'd get really annoying. You'd always play the wrong one. You'd captain the wrong one. So yeah, I think the reality is if you can get like 3 of them, that's awesome. You can get 3, that's great for the run home, and then a 4th who's like a really good solid 55, 65 plus, kind of average. If you can get one of those guys just to plug in there, or a high upside person that you can play on matchups week to week, then that's kind of the goal for the run home, is to get 3 really top line players, and then your 4th one is your plug and play.
Yeah. Now, with the way that the year has gone, where CTW is I guess a much more valuable position as compared to what it's been in previous years, what are you guys looking at for your bench? I guess, so we've obviously got the standard 13 that everyone has to play. Who are you looking? What positions are you looking at for your 4, roughly structure-wise? What are you thinking? Like, I guess, obviously, we've got a second fullback, halves. What are you thinking, Rob? What do you, I guess, want to sit?
Look, I'm sure we've all done it, right? Everyone has sat there with a spreadsheet and worked out their last trades and their cash and what's their team going to look like, right? So, barring disaster, I'm going to have 2 good hookers. I'm going to have 2 good props and an excellent third prop, which will probably be Barnett. I'm going to have Fafita, Katoa, Crichton at the second row. I'm going to have a floater like Barnett, and I'm going to have Plath. I'm going to have 4 good halves. It's going to be Hughes, Hines, Burton, and Brown. May fit in Cleary, but at this point, I'm happy with those 4, right? I'd happily play all 4 in any matchup.
Yep.
2 good fullbacks. For me, it's going to be Teddy, and I think it's going to be Latrell. I'm not locked in on my last fullback. And then I'm going to have preferably 6 centre wings, but money might make it 5+ Hero. And that's going to be Young, Holmes, Garrick, Mulatalo. And at the moment, I've got Asako and Manu. One of those will go, hopefully, to To'o, and the other one might have to go for cash. That's what my final team's going to look like.
Ideally.
Oh, no,
right.
no, it's got the spreadsheet. That's what it's
got.
There'll be no injuries.
Yes. All right, hold on. I'm just going to find some wood to knock on there. Anton, what about yourself? What are you looking at, I guess, for your ideal bench makeup? Once you're done.
My team, and I think every team should have a double fullback strategy. So the time for mucking around trying to, use fullback to generate cash. I think we need to get out of that as quick as we can. For people who are still mucking around in that strategy, you need to get your second fullback into place when Origin finishes, or even beforehand if you can. And for me, that is Latrell and Teddy. So I've been really happy with Latrell. Less happy when he played his way into Origin, but when he actually played Origin, played awesome, I was okay with it. So that's kind of my approach there. I think four gun halves, if I can. Right now, I've got Sam Walker, Brown, Cody Walker, and Lockie Galvin. I'm going to try. I'll be getting Hines and Cleary into that setup at some stage. I don't know how. I don't really want to drop Sam Walker, although like he did me dirty as captain last week, so I'm kind of like hovering over his name with my cursor. But he survives because he's playing the Dragons. And so that's 3 spots tied up, and then I'll have a second rower as my my fourth. So at the moment I've got Fafita, Nikora, Eli Katoa, Angus Crichton, Kai Pespel, and Howarth. So I've got a few to choose from there. Maybe Kai Pespel becomes someone a bit more reliable there, but honestly, like he's a fifth second rower, so at the moment I'm not that worried. Seen a few people that are thinking of moving him to Cartwright this week, and I'm kind of like, I see the appeal, but I just don't think you make enough money in that trade for it to be worth it, especially because they both play 19, and like it's kind of feels like it's probably not going to pay off for you in the end.
I think people are selling KPP too early. I think he's a 19 hold, but I would say, like we've all seen it, you see guys who come into the NRL for their first year, the very back end of that season is very, very hard on them. They've never played so many weeks of consistent high-level football before, and it takes a toll on everyone. And whether they're a rookie who's coming in or they're an Englishman he played seasons of high-level football, but he's never played this for so long, and I think it will wear on him.
Yep. And I think the reason I kind of keep, I saw that trade popping up, and I kind of went, oh, that's interesting. But obviously with no Hopgood there, he's pretty much guaranteed 80 minutes every week, Bryce Cartwright. And the Eels are so desperate right now. They are last. And you kind of go, Moses is there, you got Brown, you have Clint Gutherson. Like they hate the fact that they are last. So they are going to be
second last on points difference, aren't they?
Oh, is it second last?
I think so. I work with an Eels fan, and he has been bleating about that. But let me
He's been going second last. Yeah. So it's one of those things where I think, like, even though they may be losing games, they're not going to be short on attack. Will be going hard. And plus, like you said before, Rob, some players are fun to own, and in the second row, there's probably not much more fun than Bryce Cartwright. So I think anyone who's doing that trade, let's say that trade is what gives you the cash to go Lockie Galvin to Nicho Hines in a week's time, or or something similar. Then I can kind of get around that, because you're kind of probably going to get not that much difference in terms of the second rowers, but it could be quite a dramatic difference in the halves. So
let's be honest, if he's your fourth second row, he's only your last reserve. And you've got other reserve options, right? You can throw in one of your centre wings. You can throw someone else. So
exactly. And in my case, he's my fifth.
If that trade gets you that, then I'm into it.
Yeah.
All right, no worries. Now, as we start to wrap down a bit, I put out a shout out into the Discord earlier tonight for a few questions, and there's a couple of doozies here to sort of see what you guys think. There's a couple that they're too much for this podcast, so I'll try to do what I can afterwards. But this one is one that caught my interest from Harold. With Koala Matangi starting at lock over Cam Murray, do you think he could be a keeper for the run home? I personally don't think so, because I don't think he's quite jumped up into that sort of what you'd want as a keeper number for average, but we'll see what you guys think. Start with you, Rob.
He's a guy I looked at really closely. And if Tom had, done us all a favor and made him dual position just for the hell of it, then, I'd be looking at him maybe over Barnett. But I just fear that I just fear that he's not quite there. And I've seen guys that have these big bursts, and like he scored 2 tries in 2 games, I think, as well, right? So you always got to factor that in to the price.
Yeah.
So his base is around 50, 55, which is good.
Yeah.
And if it was the beginning of the season, I'd be interested. But at the end of the season, nah, not so much. Yeah. Like McInnes is another one I've kind of floated looking at that, that kind of odd second row workaholic. But they only need to be moved a little bit, like a little bit of bench or a little bit on an edge. McInnes, Murray goes back in the middle and suddenly it's all blows up in your face again. That's not going to happen with Crichton. It's not going to happen with Katoa. It's not going to happen with Fifita. That's why they're the super coach guys.
Yeah. What about you, Anton? What do you think about Keon? I guess
I like him for the reason that he's played all of his buys. It's good. It's probably a luxury trade. I think if you're bringing him in, it's probably you're making some kind of sideways move to bring him in. Unless someone's gone injured, like say you got a Jacob Preston or someone like that, and you really want the number for round 19, then I kind of go like, okay, well he's a valid number. Looks like Arrow's going to go for season-ending surgery soon, which means that they are going to be short in the middle, and they're going to be short on size. So he's been killing it the last month in the middle, but that's not to say he's going to stay there. If he moves to the edge though, he doesn't. He was playing outside Lachlan Ilias earlier in the season. He won't be doing that now. He'll be playing with Cody Walker if he moves to the right, and he'll be playing with Whiten if he plays on the left. So I'd be less worried about him on an edge, and Souths just look a better team. I don't think there's much. I don't think you'll lose much by going with him, and he plays every week. So I think you are getting a good buy, but I just sort of temper your expectations in terms of output because he won't score tries every week. That the round where he scored a try and scored 78, like that becomes a 60 or less than 60 without that. So you just kind of have to temper your expectations for someone who's $678,000 when you could get Brass Cartwright for $100,000 less or more, $200,000 less.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of the other questions we've received all seem to relate the stuff that we've talked about. So stuff about Cooler and other options. And I think we've covered pretty much everything that's sort of come through with that. So I guess as we look to wrap up, what are you guys thinking for trades? And then captaincy, vice captaincy, what are you thinking?
Sorry, I just jumped in automatically. It's unlike me. I'm only making one trade this week. I only made one trade last week. And it's a stupid trade, right? So I'm quite happy to put my head on the block. I'm trading out Wishart the week he plays the Tigers, and I'm bringing in Hines, even though he has a BE of 113. And he's playing the Titans, who are a weird team. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad, but often they leak points. So
they're amazing when they play us.
Well, I didn't want to bring that up, but now that you have, let's go into it. 69, right? There's lots of good reasons not to make this trade, right? I could just sit and not make it, but I feel I'm going to want to possibly make 2 next week, and I want to have Hines because he plays the Tigers next week.
Yeah.
I figure I'm paying $30,000, right? I think Hines might drop 30K this week. Might score 75 on a BE of 113. But I'm all right with that. I've got a big enough bank. I'll pay 30K to get 70 points with the potential, like Nico's copped heaps of crap all week. The Titans can be flaky. If he comes out and has a big game, he could score 180. Like, he is a guy who can do that. We know he can do that. So I'm buying on potential. I'm buying because it's been raining. And I'm buying because when Nico's got wet hair, Nico is great.
Yeah, and it's at Shark Park as well, which he plays much better at compared to away. So, Anton, what are you thinking? Sorry, you go, Rob.
There's some shockers there as well, to be fair. Like, I'm not worried about where he plays. I just think my team looks better with Nico in it.
Yeah.
So that's the trade I'm making. Yeah.
He's playing at Coffs Harbour too. So he's not playing.
That's right.
It's an away trip. It's been pissing down for a week. Yeah.
Yep. So all over it.
Wet hair confirmed. Yep.
Yeah. But there's a lot of rumors going around about Nico as well. And I'm not one of those people who kind of, makes moves on the basis of that sort of stuff. But there's a lot of stuff that he's just not happy in general. Some people are saying he's not happy being at Cronulla. Some people he's saying it was Origin that he's still kicking stones around, or he's just lost confidence completely. Maybe, I don't know, but we've seen that from Nicho Hynes over his career, and he's always bounced back. And it's just a matter of when. Gonna happen. There's going to be 140, 150 score. That's gonna make everybody wince when they don't have him. So you kind of want to be there for that. I'm going to wait on that one. I'm just doing one trade this week, and it's Manu to Dom Young, and that's just me trying to cover my ass because I'm afraid of not owning Dom Young now. I actually had Dom Young and sold him ages ago. He had a really high BE.
He got the -5. That was probably a smart move. Yeah.
Yeah, it was around that time, and I wanted David Fifita. So he wasn't picked for Origin, and I made a whole bunch of moves with that, and he dropped about, I don't know, over the course of that time, he's only dropped about 80K or whatever, but he scored a couple of tons in that time too. But water under the bridge, that's fine. That's fine. So yeah, I'm doing Young in for Manu. I'm really tempted to bring. That leaves me with about 30 grand, which is enough to go Sam Walker to Nicho Hynes. But I just Sam Walker owes me. He owes me big time, and he's kicking goals, and they're playing at Allianz, and they're playing against the Dragons. He scored 100.
As a Roosters fan, never count a big score against the Dragons. They always lift against us. Always. Not this year, earlier. On Anzac Day, that was glorious. But they do tend to lift and give us a hard go. Yeah.
Well, Anzac Day, he scored 120-something against the Dragons earlier this year. So I'm basically going to say, if you don't do it again, then you just don't like our soldiers. That's just you just being anti-Australia is what you're saying. So that's what I'm going to say.
That's all you think for that. Yeah.
So anyway, I'm gonna wait a week on Nicho. I'm gonna use just save the trade, because if something happens to Nicho Hynes this week, I'll kick myself. And I'm gonna wait until Walker's out on the bye, and then I'll probably sell him then. But that's me. Just one trade for me.
About VC and C, because I realised I forgot to mention that. So I'll try to be a host and segue back.
Oh man, VC and C sucks for me because I don't have a standout captain later in the round. I really like Latrell against the Eels. I've got Latrell at fullback there. I really want to VC him, but then I'm kind of like, if I do that, it takes out James Tedesco. He's not an option for me then. So what I'm thinking is do VC Cody Walker and put the C on James Tedesco. That's what I'm thinking.
I like that.
I've brought in Hynes on potential, and I haven't made him vice captain. I've gone vice captain Hughes. I just can't ignore Hughes against the Tigers.
Yeah.
I think it's at Leichhardt, but I don't care where it is. He's in sublime form.
So good.
And the Tigers are brave, but geez, they're young. And Hughes is such a savvy half. Where he's at his best is just picking apart, people who aren't where they should be. And when you're young, you're not going to be where you should be. So
his instincts are amazing at the moment. The whole Melbourne team, like that, when you actually, after they dismantled us a little while ago, I really started paying attention to what they do during games, because often, you look at halftime when you look at the stats, there'll be one team that's had X amount of completions, they have this amount of territory, they've done all these different things, yardage and stuff, and you go, oh well, that team must be in the lead, and it's not. It's Melbourne. It's the other team. They can attack you from anywhere. They don't have to be winning all of the areas that most teams think you have to win games. They can beat you any which way you want. So if you're not paying attention, you're out of position. Hughes is just he's kind of seeing things a few seconds before everybody else.
Yeah.
Just amazing form. It's really cool to watch unless you're playing him.
Yeah, he's in as good a form as I've seen him. And he's always been underrated by Supercoach people because he's a halfback who doesn't kick, like DCE. And they're like, Hynes and Cleary are the best halfbacks in the game. Well, they're the best halfbacks in Supercoach, but that's a difference from being the best halfbacks in the game. Yeah.
And it's like we were saying before too, Melbourne are going to take some teams apart from after Origin. They're going to completely dismantle them, and he's going to be in everything with Munster out.
Yeah. For me, at the moment, I'm leaning towards going Galvin out for Hines, because that'll cost me about 70k. And to make that money, I'm probably going to have to do Manu to Marju just to fund that.
Yep.
I mean, I know that we've sort of talked him down, and I'm hoping that I can have him as like maybe 6th CTW.
It could be a master.
It is what it is.
Honestly,
Yeah.
with
Mate, I don't mind today.
And I'm
Yeah.
far enough back that I'm happy to roll the dice. And because of that, I will be going VC Nico. And I'm one of the idiots that brought in Brian Pappenhausen the other on for the buy instead of Tedesco. So I'm probably just going to go balls to the wall and put the seat on Pappenhausen this week.
You're a brave man.
I am brave, but I'm sitting almost
14,
20k.
isn't
So,
he? Didn't they pick Suafar Longo at 14?
yeah, in the past when they've played him, they've played both at the same time. So I would imagine that Pappenhausen will stay on. He won't go off. And that they'll put
Oh,
on-
you're saying that because you've put the captaincy on him. If you hadn't put the captaincy on him, you'd be going, they're going to be up by 28, with
Yep.
60 done. They'll sit Paps. They're not going to risk him.
Well, if
Sorry,
they're up
I
by
don't
that
mean
point
to
where
be
he's,
that guy. I do mean to be that.
no, it's all right. If he's getting rested at that point in the game, he's probably got
Then we've already
figures
scored
anyway.
lots of points.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly
I've told
right.
myself
So,
that story too.
Right. And
So-
Ryan Pappenhausen's a Tigers junior as well. So,
Yeah.
you might be making a little homecoming.
yeah,
a bit like
well,
Teddy.
hopefully.
I mean, let's really humiliate. Let's make it miserable for all of those Tigers supporters. How many fullbacks did they let go? Yeah.
Oh, boy. Wade McKinnon, we got that one.
Yep. All right. Anyway, on that note, I just want to say thank you so much for joining me. Wrap it up. For anybody out there that's not in the Discord, I say it every week. Jump in, talk a bunch of Supercoach, help you with the trades, all the rest of it. We've got Mr. Charity will be running his team reviews on Thursdays. Very much the kind of thing where you crack a bevy if you're of the appropriate age and sit down and talk a bit of crap, to be honest. It's always a bit of fun. Anyway, yeah, thank you so much for joining me again. Good luck to all the super coaches out there. And yeah, good luck for the run home. We'll see you next time.
Pleasure.
See you later.